Hey, everybody, it's Chris Aiken from the Classic Metal Show and the Aftershocks podcast. And I know you want to see this next episode, but right before we do it, just want to remind you that if you have an Amazon device, whether it's a TV or a Fire Stick or Fire Cube or whatever it would be, a Fire Box if you're old school, make sure you add the CMSPN to it. Just look up CMS Podcast Network on your Amazon device. Add the channel, and you will get every episode of all 4 shows for free right there on your TV. Make us part of your TV viewing every single day and night, all right? It's the CMS Podcast Network, cmspn.com, and it is now on Amazon. So get it, all right? All right, here's the episode you came to see.
You are about to enter the Shockwaves Skullsessions podcast on shockwaveskullsessions.com. And now your host, Bob Nalbandian.
Oh, man, we got Rev Jones. My old buddy, Rev Jones, bass player extraordinaire, now tour master extraordinaire. What is that, the Rev Jones Band? You got your own T-shirts. Look at that.
I've got my own band.
Yes, you do. You have a good band at that. And we'll talk about that in this podcast here. And, well, let me introduce Rev Jones, as well as being a bass player in his own band, the Rev Jones Band. You played bass with a number of legendary, some of my favorite guitar players of all time. That includes Michael Schenker Group, with Michael Schenker, of course, MSG. You toured with Uli Roth. You toured with Leslie West and Mountain. Look at that. You also toured with Steelheart. I know you did a few shows with that band Fuel. And I'm sure that you played with George Lynch. Were you playing live with George Lynch as well?
I did an album with him.
An album with him?
Actually, so, I was supposed to play with him this past weekend. They had a Dallas guitar show, and I was getting in on the jam with him, and then the owner of the thing called me back and said, "George doesn't know who you are." I said, "Okay." I sent him all the pictures of the album credits and me and George recording, and I said, "Maybe you didn't say Rev Jones properly."
Well, don't be too disappointed. I know another bass player that toured with him for a while and met him later on, and he goes, "Who are you again?" He's like, "Dude, I toured with you for." So there you go.
No, I guess I talk to him all the time. Somehow there was a miscommunication. I don't know. I'll blame it on.
All right. And of course, Rev Jones currently, or when active, when things are active again, you are currently the road manager for George Thorogood.
Well, the guitar tech. And
the guitar tech, yes.
Backline tech.
There you go. And speaking of managers, we got the manager, the man, the myth, the legend, the manager for George Thorogood. First time on this podcast, Adam Conde. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Bob. It's good to see you, albeit virtually.
Yes, it is. And thank you for being a big supporter of the Inside Metal series. Adam, a longtime metalhead and big fan of the LA metal scene for many years. So we will not just only talk George Thorogood, we'll talk metal on this episode.
Awesome. I love to talk metal.
Right on, man. Well, let's talk right now about the current situation, what you got going on. Obviously, I know before this whole pandemic hit, George was pretty active doing shows, and you had a lot of shows, tours scheduled for George. I had seen him open up for ZZ Top a couple years back, and even if you're not a George Thorogood fan, you got to see this guy live. He is just such an entertainer still to this day. What's going on now? I know you rebooked some shows for possibly late summer, or is it all for next year now?
Yeah, no, we're hoping to work, man. We're all ready. Basically, we have shows booked. Maybe some of them aren't announced yet, but starting in August, and we've got a full year through the end of 2022 or 21, and then we'll start back up next year early, and we have a full year booked, which are a lot of them rescheduled, but a lot of them new. So yeah, pre-pandemic, we were looking at 75 to 80 shows a year, and we're going to get back there. So as soon as they flip the light switch on, we're there.
All right.
Yeah.
And that'll get you back working. I guess you'll be working that tour, right, Rev?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As far as he knows.
As far as he knows. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, Rev will for sure be there. Yeah.
Right on. Well, dude, I'm looking forward to that. And of course, George is that's really his bread and butter. I mean, I'm sure he does well. But with artists today, these as you call legacy artists, so to speak, or classic rock artists, whatever term you may use, that are still touring out there today. That's really what they do. There's not really. I mean, he still does get a lot of play on obviously classic rock radio. And I remember at one time I had heard that George Thorogood was one of the biggest artists when it comes to royalties paid off jukeboxes during the 80s.
You and I talked about that, and I can't corroborate that, but it would make sense. I know he was up there in the licensing world for Bad to the Bone.
Right, Bad to the Bone. Those are all bar songs, and you think about all the bars that had jukeboxes throughout the Midwest and Middle America. I mean, that totally makes sense.
And the poor guy can't get away from the fact that, well, I think it's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to Rev, where just because we're guilty by association, where, we're going to put Bad to the Bone on the jukebox because Rev's here. I'm sure he'll like that, and but yeah, I think it's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, dude, that's a legacy song. What is that? Nearly 40 years old, that song, and
1982, and not to mention, I Drink Alone and One Bourbon, One Scotch, One Beer, and Get a Haircut, Move It On Over, and
those songs are still legacy songs, still played today, and that's a rarity for a band to have that many. He's definitely not a one. As people may recall, Bad to the Bone. He's definitely not a one-hit wonder. You just named 5 or 6 songs that were huge.
And even if some that he has written, some that he hasn't, he's certainly made them his own. And we all who've worked with him, it's like I defy anyone to try to cop those songs and sound like him. He's just got his own thing about him in his own way. And like you said, the live show is where it's at. The energy and he still believes in entertainment, and he still wants to give the entertainment value to people. And that's part of the reason why we all like working for him. Plus he's a really cool guy. He
definitely seems that way. And like I said, when I saw him live, I was just blown away, because you don't see that anymore. The entertainers that really work the crowd, and all the whole crowd, even though it was a ZZ Top show, it seemed like he almost went over better, because all those songs people were singing along, and he got the whole audience singing along, and it's just drinking music, and you don't hear that anymore in this kind of PC society where you can't talk about certain stuff. It's all about drinking, partying, and just having a good time. And it was very refreshing to see that.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you liked it, man.
Oh, absolutely.
That was in where was that?
That was at the fair.
Palo Alto.
Yeah, no, that one was actually in Sacramento at the fair at the state.
Oh, it's like okay.
Yeah, that I came out for. Yeah,
nice, cool
show.
It's that way. Last year when we were in New Zealand with did these festivals, and it was what was it? Billy Idol, George,
Creedence Clearwater Revisited.
Oh wow,
Smash Mouth and Anastasia. So it was this huge thing, and I mean, nobody was really the headliner, but everybody sang every word of George songs,
Yeah.
So no matter who they come to see, they, we had the same thing when we toured with Bryan Adams, a few years back. They're, a George fan isn't necessarily going to like Bryan Adams, but the Bryan Adams fans all like George,
Yeah.
Because the songs, songs are fun, they're catchy. Plus, he's selling them to you,
Right.
Regardless of it, he's going to be, across the stage dancing it up, giving you, giving you the show, and you're going to go, oh, I hate this song, and he's going to come across, I love this song, Even my wife, she's like 30 years younger than me. When I took her to see George the first time, she couldn't believe. She was blown away at, how entertaining it is,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that's one thing. That's why he's lasted this long, And when we play with other artists that are in the same, I guess, age category or whatever, the majority of them don't come across that way, It's almost like some of them you're like, oh God, oh yay, you know. You don't want to,
Right.
you know, disrespect them, but just like, oh, and then some of them you're like, oh, that's great, yeah, they're great, and then George comes out, and you're, you know, it's like the old thing about we don't need security here, we don't need a, you know, a barricade, and it's always
Right.
going to be that 90-year-old woman that's never done anything,
Right. So many
you know?
times that's happened. Yeah. Where this is going to be an older crowd, and we don't really need a barricade. We're gonna and you say, look, I first of all, they're a heavy drinking crowd, and they're a party crowd, and you put heavy drinking and party together, and then throw in testosterone, and yeah. But Rev's right. It's usually not some guy it's the woman that you never expected who is like a spider monkey onto the stage, and
Those elderly women, man, they're insane.
yeah, right.
Back in the day, it used to be, oh, you crazy youth. Now all the young kids are going, oh, you crazy old people.
Right.
The young people are all mellow on their iPhones and this and that, and I mean, shit. I still go see a metal show. I'm still up front of the stage, banging and getting those looks like, what is this? What's this old guy doing?
Yeah.
So I can imagine with those women. But it's funny you mentioned about that. Well, let's go as far as the touring aspect. What is so do you do have shows planned for later this summer?
Correct.
And is it going to be a headlining tour or?
Yeah, it's
right.
primarily a headlining tour. We do a lot of theaters, large clubs, PACs, and then there are some festivals in there as well.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah, but it'll be primarily this year, and that's just the way it was already laid out. It was the later part of the year were our own shows. Yeah.
Right on. Oh, what I was going to say is, I remember you had just said about how much of a drinking crowd it is. I remember I spoke with someone who worked all those big amphitheaters, the big summer amphitheaters, and he had told me and this is something you don't account for is the alcohol sales. That's why you're paying $25 a beer or whatever.
Yeah, right.
The artists are obviously making a bit of a percent of that, I would hope, or a pretty good percent, depending on the case. But he had said that George Thorogood and Jimmy Buffett, of course, Jimmy Buffett, a huge drinking crowd, were like some of the top artists, and then the metal bands were down the road a bit. You had like the Guns N' Roses and Metallica obviously were kind of up there, but I was surprised that Jimmy Buffett and George Thorogood brought in the biggest income as far as alcohol sales at these big venues. So there you go, another aspect of the business. So, but Rev, you got the latest album, Backwash, a killer solo record that you put out, and you had what was it, Blasted to Static, released a few years back.
Well,
so is this your second solo record? So you're still obviously.
I have a new one right now that is being mixed.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that a bit.
It's going to be called Rev Jones in the Key of Z.
Love it.
Dark Star Records is going to put it out. It's pretty good. I think it's exactly like any Rev Jones album. It's going to be unpredictable at what the next song sounds like. Might be country, might be bluegrass, might be metal, whatever. But I'll get Jeff Martin back on drums.
All right.
I did all the guitar again on this one, except for the solos. I got Russ Paris. He played on a song. If you don't know Russ, he was in Fight, and he's also Satchel.
Yeah.
So I got who else? Bill from Firehouse. I got Rowan Robertson, Ira Black, Jack Frost, Urosh from Steelheart played with me. Robbie Lochner, he played with Rob Halford as well. He plays with Jack right now. Who else? Jim Suler from the Destroyers. From George Thorogood and the Destroyers.
Real nice guy. We went out to dinner with him.
Yeah. I got Michael T. Ross on a song, keyboard player.
All right.
A couple of country guys from Oklahoma that
got to get those country boys in there.
It's quite a matchup, but it makes it cool because every song is kind of different. So every solo, it's like they're all complete different styles, but it all, it almost seems like the song was written for them, Right.
Well, that's great that you're still active, and hopefully we'll get you out there seeing you out there touring on that. Are you still? I know you had told me that being George's guitar tech was a much steadier income, so to speak, than even touring with names like Michael Schenker, Leslie West, and Uli Roth, because they're always so sporadic on tours. But are you still looking to do possibly some shows if Michael was to call you for a tour?
Yeah, we were actually. It's weird. When Michael started doing this Michael Schenker Fest with all the singers, originally me and Pete Holmes were going to be the U.S. band.
Right.
So he was going to have Ted and Chris be the Europe band.
Sure.
We were going to be the U.S. band. There was actually going to be a different Japanese band. I think it was going to be Simon and
somebody
else.
That. Yeah.
And the reason was because he wanted to. If I do the second tour, I can change it.
Right.
So you could go. The main reason is because then he could put a DVD out from each one.
True.
I mean, he's always thinking of that. He used to always say, "I don't know why they take so many pictures of me. I look the same in every picture." And he's always thinking about that. So originally that was how it was, and then they did those first shows, and it was just a few, and then they got the thing for Japan, and went ahead and took that first band, and then it was locked in that it was just going to be Chris and Ted, and then when Ted passed away, they put Bodo in there, and then now I'm not sure if they're gonna keep that lineup, because he has that new album with different of the more modern age singers and stuff. So I'm not sure what he's doing now, but there might still be
changing, Michael.
Yeah, there might still be a chance. Usually, I could say, there's no more MSG with me, and then 2 days later, I'll get an email. I need you to play the whole tour.
It'd be interesting to get into that guy's mind to see how it works.
And now that he doesn't drink or anything, it's it's like a different person. I mean, in the old days, there's at least 3 or 4 people in there, and I met them all. But since he stopped drinking, it's like very focused, and it's a good deal. So, and we actually, it sucks. Right before Leslie passed away, we were going to start working on a Leslie West album.
I remember you telling me that.
And we were like literally a couple of weeks away from going in to start it. It was just going to be like Mountain, and it was going to be all songs of his, kind of redone, and so then after he passed away, we just started working on it. Mascot's going to put it out. We're going to do a tribute album with me and Bobby Rondinelli, since we were the rhythm section, so we play on everything. And then there's a bunch of guests. I know Slash is on it for sure. Lukather's on it.
Wow.
D. Snyder, so there's some other guys that I don't really know for sure if, that are locked in. I can't really say yet, but so I'm sure that'll be, probably out within the year, so, but so look out for that one too. Make sure you get the new Rev Jones album when it comes out, maybe July.
Yes.
And then you can pick up that when it comes out, and then you can listen to him on the way to a George Thorogood show.
There you go. How's that for a sales?
Man,
shameless self.
Hire this.
Right.
Very cool.
So.
Yeah, Bobby Rondinelli, what an underrated drummer, man.
Oh yeah.
I remember when he replaced Cozy Powell. I saw him in Rainbow on, what was it, the Straight Between the Eyes tours, or one of the tours he first joined, or Difficulty Cure, and boy, that guy could play.
Well, it's funny. The first time I'd met him on the phone, and Leslie, hey, Rondinelli's gonna play with us, and I was like, cool. So I had to go meet him at NAMM, just so we'd know each other the first time we played. And I was doing one of the metal jam things at NAMM with I think Jeff Martin was playing drums, and I can't even remember who all was doing it, but it's like the metal jam they do every year,
Sure.
And so we were out there playing, and I talked to him that day, and I said, hey, come out and see us. We're at this whatever the club was. So he shows up. Right, he shows up. I make him get up and do Long Live Rock and Roll or something, So the first time I even really met him, we were, playing a Rainbow song, so.
Right.
It was cool. But he's a great drummer. I would hate to have been in that position, that he played on Love at First Sting. Dieter Dirks would send
that's
Herman
right.
and those guys home. They were so out of it they couldn't play. He
Right,
would send them home, and then Jimmy Bain and Rondinelli came in and played all the parts, but they could never tell anybody.
Oh, wow.
And until years later, whenever the whole fighting and suing back and forth, and then the truth came out, nobody could,
Right.
and that had to suck every day hearing "Rock You Like a Hurricane" on the radio. It's, people going, "Oh, that drummer's great," and you're like, "Well, it's me."
Interesting. Well, Adam, you've had quite a history, and being as young as you are, being a
thank you,
manager. I mean, you're much younger than George, obviously, and you've worked with a lot of as a touring road manager, a lot of classic soul. Little Richard, Aretha Franklin, George Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
I know you had worked with in the past as tour manager. And then you worked a slew of country artists. So you've done quite a bit in your life on the road. Talk a little bit about that and how you got into the business.
Well, I got into it. I think, like a lot of people, frustrated musician, or not even frustrated, but just I grew up a piano player. I went to college for classical piano and got a scholarship in composition, and moved to Nashville to be a player. But before then, it was just, I met a guy that was what was called a backline tech. I had no idea what a backline tech was, but it was cool because he worked all these shows. He had a huge arsenal of rental keyboards and rental gear. So his bread and butter was really R&B and hip hop acts and such, because he had all the keyboards. And so I started kind of skipping some classes, or on the weekends going to cover shows doing backline, which is basically you have all the gear, but you don't have lights or PA or anything. And you set up the keyboards and the amps and make sure they work. And it was thrown into the fire. I didn't know how to make an amp work if a tube goes out. I'm a hack guitar player. I don't, but it was just like anybody else. It's trial by fire. You get thrown into it, you get yelled at enough times, and you think, I better learn how to change a fuse, things like that. So I started out doing backline, and that's where I got the first tours that I did as a backline tech were Aretha Franklin and Little Richard. I did separately tours.
Right.
And so I kind of got to see a little bit of the road world and knew I really liked it. And when I moved to Nashville, I was working in a factory 8 at night, 8 in the morning. And I met a friend of a friend who was a road manager and said, "Hey, I'm leaving this gig. Do you want to take over as road manager and get you out of the factory?" And I said, I don't even, I don't have a clue what a road manager does. And he said, it's just people skills and organization. You can do it. And I said, yeah, okay. So I got the gig. It was a signed band with a good history. It was a band called the Pirates of the Mississippi, and they were on Capitol Records. And I immediately panicked because I realized you just agreed to do something you don't have a clue how to do. And it was me and one other guy, and we set up the gear and did sound checks together and hired, the local people to do merch, and just progressed on and got more and more road gigs and really enjoyed it. And I felt like being a musician, I could speak musician a little better. I knew what that feeling was to be nervous and your ego and, all the ups and downs of being a musician and going on stage. So I feel like I was a little better at it than some, just because I could talk to musicians and I could relate. And all my life growing up, I read liner notes. I loved reading liner notes. So I knew who players were on albums and who engineers were. And, it was the same. You get the album, you go home, you put the headphones on, and you read the liner notes and look at the artwork. And, I knew the players, and, then you meet guys like Rev who actually played with them and know them. And, Rev can tell you how many times he and I just sit and talk, and I go, really? That was like the Bobby Rondinelli story. I had no idea, I had those albums, but, so anyways, yeah, I just moved through that, was with George 10 years as his tour manager. And when his manager retired, I knew at that point I wanted to be a manager. So I threw my hat in the ring, and he took the bait. And then, it was a job to, one, don't screw up 40 years worth of hard work and
That must
what
have
he'd
been pressure,
what he'd accomplished, and then try to elevate things on a certain point, try to change things up a little bit. But it was working, so it wasn't like I had to come in and retool the whole operation. There were just and luckily George allowed me to do that, and he's Rev will tell you from everything from set design, how it works. It's a community effort, and he allows us all to do it. We sit with cocktail napkins and draw out things and do very crude renderings using mic stands and yardsticks and that. Will this work? And we do it all in-house, and there's a certain sense of pride that we all have knowing that we do that, and we have a real stake, and we've got some skin in the game.
Well, that's great. That's because I mean, so many of these legacy artists. I'm getting a bit of an echo here. Maybe I should throw the headphones on. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, so many of these legacy artists, they have these old-time managers who are cool, but they're not hip to the new technology or what's going on or how to remarket the band to the youth audience. I remember talking to Adam Parsons. Hold on, let me put these in. It might sound a little better here. Adam Parsons manages Thin Lizzy and Black Star Riders and Uriah Heep and Saxon and a lot of these bands, and he says it's constantly a matter of remarketing these artists. Let's see if that works. Check. But that's the cool thing about having someone like you that's a lot younger and hip to the game and knows the current marketplace a lot better than, because you run into a lot of these old managers. It's like, God, these guys don't have a clue to what's the current market is. They're still marketing to terrestrial radio, new product, and they're not going to play. I'm sorry, no matter how good a new George Thorogood album is, or a new Deep Purple album is, or whatever, or new Scorpions album is. These modern or these radio stations, classic rock radio stations, they won't play it. They'll play the old hits. Yeah. But so you have to think outside the market, and that's something important.
Well, it is, and part of it is a. Now I'm echoing. Am I echoing in your ear?
It's it'll sometimes do that. Sometimes putting a headphone in it helps, but I don't know what.
It's okay.
List. All right.
No, I for me, it's like I have to constantly educate myself and learn too. And I think it's like with anything in life, if you think you've got it all figured out, you're absolutely wrong, because there's in our business, it's always changing and always evolving, and staying on top of it is quite a task in itself. And not that I have it all figured out, but it's the whole thing of, I'm not afraid to ask. If I don't know how to do it, I'll ask somebody, or I'll find somebody younger than me that can explain it to me, or older than me that can explain it to me. And then, I think heritage artists, like you're mentioning, Thin Lizzy and George and the Scorpions and any artist that's been around for a while, some of them really want to know that, but some of them could care less. And really their job is not to do that. Their job is to create music and tour. And
sure,
you want to try to educate them that, but they hire you in order to handle those things for them. And then they don't want to, George could care less about that. He learns, but that's not his job. And that, their job is to be a musician and put on great shows and make great music and entertain us all. And
you're not as confused as Nigel.
That's it. That's it for sure.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. Well, most artists, they don't want to be on Facebook and Instagram and having to post stuff every day. It's like, hell with that. That's, that's something for their publicists and stuff to do.
The other thing is I did van and trailer tours. I did where I was driving the van with the gear and the band was not. And, up until my first few bus tours, where pre-cell phone, where it was that the manager is at home sleeping in his own bed and everything's great there, but maybe things are falling apart out on the road. And I never wanted to be that guy. I never wanted to be the guy that was so separated from, and I still tour with George, but even that being said, you've got to know what's going on with the crew and everybody and know that without them, it's not going to happen,
And Adam is one of those guys that doesn't, he's there every day. So he's one of the crew guys, he's one of the team instead of the guy that comes in every 2 weeks going, oh my God, why are we spinning this? And, starts freaking out. He's the guy that's, he's in there. He knows why, things are working and why things, aren't working.
It does help to be out there, not only with George, but to just, you can tell when your guys are getting tired, when they're getting haggard, when you look at something and say, something as small as having a little Nespresso machine that you carry around with you can mean a lot to somebody, or making, going, what, these guys sure could use a day off on the road where it's really a day off, and a lot of that just comes from having done it myself, but being out there, you better, if you don't see it, you got your eyes closed.
Well, that's important. I think that's a good point you made, because I think a lot of managers and tour managers don't see that, or a lot of people outside, the fans don't see that, and they wonder, why are these bands going at it like little children and fighting and arguing? But it is those little things that makes, because, I know, being, just going, and it could be just going on vacation or whatever, you're on the road for a while, things don't go right, and you're with certain people for a week, just a week, and they get on your nerves, and you have to kind of realize that before things get out of control and kind of sense what's going on. And hey, I think we should take a break. I think they need to take a break. And the label and everything. I remember back in the day, the labels like put the band out on the road, let them work, and these bands would go out. Even in the 80s, Metallica, Megadeth, they would go out for 18 months straight, without a break. And it's like, that's suicide. And they wonder why these band members are changing, and why there's fights, why everyone's on drugs, why everyone's drinking and have come back and go into rehab. That could really.
Yeah. I've done it with Michael Shaker. We played 300 shows in 2006, and we canceled America. So that would have been, I was in Europe the whole year, we played nonstop. We would do, and part of it too is because the singer didn't really speak English very well, and he definitely didn't speak Deutsch. So he was talked into doing 8 shows in a row sometimes, or not really talked into it. There was just 8 in a row. Because Michael did, he would do as many. If you wanted to do every single day, he would play every day. It was always kind of up to the singer. And we did so many shows that everybody kind of grouped together, that because these are the only people that you could get along with. If you were hanging out with these, there might be a little tension, but we did it because that's what we do. But I was a little younger of a man, so I
think that's it too. You think about it when you're younger. The most I ever did as a road manager was 275 shows in a year. And I look back now, there's no way I can do it. No way I could do it now. I loved it at the time. But I think as we evolve as an industry, part of it, we've gotten a little softer, but part of it is it's smart. We're human beings, and that's what I was going to say with the whole being a road manager or manager. So many times I've been in that situation where it's the them and us. It's the crew versus the band, or the tour manager versus the production manager, or you can't have that. It's a us, period. I think it is us, period. We're all in it, trying to make the same thing happen. We're not curing cancer. We're trying to make people happy with music and entertain people. And I feel like we've got the greatest job in the world. So why can't we figure out a way to do it civilly and have a good time while we do it? And why can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's a good thing about now. I think these artists are at a stage where they're comfortable, financially, and they've kind of done that in the past. And now with someone like a George Thorogood, he doesn't have to travel in a van and play every night, for months. And he can do fly-in gigs and the corporate gigs, which are huge, for someone like a George Thorogood or a legacy act or a Huey Lewis who could, bankroll on just doing 3 corporate shows for Google or Apple a year, and make as much money as he did, touring for, at 10 months straight. So it's a different market, and the fly-in weekend gigs are a big thing, the festivals. So it makes it a lot easier for artists that are, well into their 50s and 60s and beyond to actually, go out on the road. So,
well, George, go ahead, Rev.
I was going to say, now I feel bad that I'm in that 50s and 60s category that you're speaking.
Yeah, me too. Well, I've heard George say it many times that, he never wanted to be in a checker cab, riding around and, playing and then driving all night and and I don't think anybody wanted to go through that. It wasn't like the glory days. That's just how it was. And you were hungry and you were trying to make it. And, he often talks about now, the bus alone, it's a nice bus, stay in decent hotels. The venues are nicer, the venues didn't exist as they do now. You don't have as many promoters trying to rip you off. Sure, it still happens, but I think the conditions are much better. But the beginning stage it's tough. That's a young man's game, and if you're not a young man, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. I can see George in the early days of the clubs playing these total country rock saloons with people throwing beer bottles and stuff at them. They have to have the chicken wire, kind of like the Blues Brothers.
They had that, and he said it was. He's not one of these guys that'll reminisce about it. He was like, it was not fun. I did not enjoy it. So
he'll tell you a million stories, but he won't tell you very many of those because he doesn't want to relive it.
No, he does not. Yeah.
Well, that's funny because back in the day, even you talk about those old shows in England at Castle Donington and Reading, where they would throw piss bottles at the headliners or the opening acts or whatever, whatever, and you had to dodge in. That was a part of the game. That's what you had to do to make it. Nowadays, people, oh my God, but we
were on a van tour playing all these great places.
Yeah.
2 people in our van. It's
people can't believe it now. Oh, they feel sorry. Oh man, it's like, that's rock and roll. That's what it is. That's what it was. So interesting. But with the pandemic that hit, I know it had to affect someone like George, who's a heavy touring artist, and someone like you too, Rev, that relies on. There I go. I just disappeared. There goes Rev.
There you go.
I'm back. There we go. I know. Obviously, you've done a lot of studio stuff, Rev, but you've made most.
It's been over a year since I physically played with a band, and the closest to that was when we were up in San Francisco recording the drums for my album, and I played tambourine while Jeff Martin played a bass drum with his hand.
Right.
That was the closest to playing in a band that I've been all year, and I was so excited. I was like,
Mr. Tambourine Man.
Yeah, but and it's hard because since 1985 I've never went that long without playing. That's when I started playing, and I've always I played at least a gig every month, in the early days, at least every month I played a gig, and, I've at least done 100, 150 shows every year of my adulthood. So to not do anything for a year and a half, almost now, it's pretty rough on my wife.
Yeah, and even you can't tour with George either, because I know George is even at his age, he's a road dog. He loves going out and performing.
I think
we did last year we did like the one acoustic show, that I flew out for, and he was so excited because for that week we were all, we were there working on his guitars, and we did some other studio stuff, but you could sense it in him too that that it's not just that it becomes part of your everyday life that a month, you're a month home and then you go back out on the road, and where's it at,
Right.
No, I think the one of the bigger things through this is the men and women that do what we do, whether you're in the band, crew, management, et cetera, the men and women that do this, it's the mental well-being that has been hurt. I mean, yeah, there's a financial component that ties in with that as well, but for so many people that this is what we do, and our friends do this. Our friends are the road. In many ways, the road family is just as close as your real family, because of what we talked about before. You're in such tight quarters, and there's you miss that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day when the truck doors close. You miss being out there with the people you love. You miss feeling purpose and doing something. And I think that's a large part of this, is that people have really suffered mentally because of lack of doing what they're built to do.
Especially so if you get somebody like me who's got ADD, it's even worse, because now I'm just focusing on nothing.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, that's something that's an important point. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's what's really rough is that they always tell you to have a backup. Got to have a backup plan in case this ever fails. And I never realized that all my backup plans are in the same category. Like teaching, I couldn't really teach whenever we stopped touring because nobody's doing, in-person lessons, and it's easy to do online lessons, but it's hard to build it from nothing. If you don't have a clientele. It's easier if you have one. So, and then being a stagehand as a backup, well, there's no show, so I can't even be a stagehand. It's like you start going, well, and I know a lot of people that picked right when it happened. They were in the stages of, I'm going to retire sometime soon. That I know several people that retired that have been doing this for almost all their lives. It's so you get all those things in there, and that normalcy of what do I do, and that makes it even worse, because even just to go, all right, I'm going to try to go with your everyday business, after a certain point you start having a mental breakdown that you don't even realize, until somebody tells you you've got to do something, got to get out of my house. Go.
Did you consider, or have you done any of these virtual concerts? I know that's became kind of big, and now it's like kind of so saturated, and a lot of people are charging for these, for a full-on show. I could see at a concert, but some of them are doing it in their bedroom.
There was a couple. I was going to do a couple of things like that, because they do shows around here. Now, I mean, everything's almost back to full now, and I was going to do some. And the problem is that I had the Rev Jones band here that I did shows with, and I got rid of my guitar player, and so it's like, well, I don't really want to play guitar and do a show, because that's not what I do. If I had a guitar player to do it with, I mean, I've done a couple of these videos, where you do a little something, but even it's still not the same. It's like,
we did a video for, was it the new drug? Is that was that from the last album or this?
Yeah, that was from the last. We actually did that. we did some of it. Was like on our last American tour. We'd filmed some of it, and we were going to finish it while we were out doing the Thorogood tour, and we got sent home for this. And Sean Berman, the monitor guy, he's the one doing the videos. He's like, well, we got to figure out a way to finish this. and I had the footage that was like in Pittsburgh, and some of the footage. So I had to, all right, how do we do this? So I went down to the lighting company and shot some footage, and shot some in my garage, threw up a green background, and we made it happen. So that at least those little things like that was about a week long. Those kind of took up that little bit, and kind of like recording. It takes up that little bit, but after that week, immediately you're back to, calling Adam every couple of days. Dirty shows.
That was funny. We've all talked a lot, all of us. We even did a couple Zoom calls just to have Zoom calls to talk to everybody, which speaks to that whole thing. Like, we actually like each other, This is one thing you go, and I actually like those guys. I like hanging out with them,
Yeah. When you're all questioning, Where's Josh? Why isn't Josh on the call?
Right. Where is he? Yeah.
Well, it definitely looks like a fun crew that you had, man, and it's great to see. But before we close things out, since this is a metal podcast, we got to talk metal. And it's funny how I met Adam was obviously through Rev. Rev saying, "Dude, I'm working with George Thorogood now. I'm his tech, and you got to meet the manager. He's a big fan of your Inside Metal documentaries. He's a total metalhead." And it's like, wow. So that was
True
so
story.
Cool. And,
True story.
yeah, talk about your metal fandom. I know you were big into the LA metal scene. And where did you grow up in LA or?
No, but I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, the Rust Belt, and every metal. I mean, that was like Metal Central. And some of these guys, like Wolf Hoffman from Accept, I've gotten to know Wolf well now, and they all
Great
talk
guy.
about, man, Hara Arena, Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati Gardens. I mean, that was a mainstay. So growing up, man, I mean, I listened. Van Halen was my first big, and I still to this day love Van Halen. But I grew up listening to Dio and Accept and Iron Maiden, and God, I loved Michael Schenker. I mean, and when I met Rev, the fact that he had played with Michael Schenker, that was unbelievable. And got to go see Rev play at was that the Roxy? Where was that?
I think so.
With Michael.
We all vanished.
Or maybe it was Gazario's. What was that? The Key Club.
Yeah, it was a Key Club. Yeah. But, Michael Schenker, Gary Moore, and, Scorpions, Maiden. Yeah. AC/DC. I love anything Graham Bonnet sang on. I was there. I saw Yngwie Malmsteen when I was, I think, 15 or 14 at a roller skating rink in Dayton. And that changed my life because Jens Johansson, lead keyboards, and which that got me into Jan Hammer. And, before that, I love John Lord, of course, John Lord, anything John Lord. I went a deep dive a couple weeks ago with listening back to In Rock and just different, and you hear those and you're like,
Unbelievable.
you're reminded of you're reminded how amazing that band was and how incredible John Lord was. But yeah, I mean, I listened to all the hair bands. I mean, I loved Rat, I loved Rough Cut, Paul Shortino. I remember MTV with the Hearing Aid video, Stars, and my friend Hank and I with the VHS, when's this video is coming on and recorded, and, all the Dio videos. So yeah, I love that stuff. I still love it and listen to it. And, I probably am weakest on just keeping up with what is the really great stuff. I mean, I they're not that new, but I like Bullet for My Valentine. I love Shadows Fall. I can't keep up with the new stuff as much as I would like to. Well, I used to work in record stores, so working in so you could listen for free and check out everything you wanted to buy.
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, as I say, was George, because George would go over great, I think, with a metal audience, just because he's just so raw and rocking. And again, the lyrics, it's all drinking, party music.
He does.
And getting laid.
He would actually do well at if he played at Vakken.
I was thinking of Vakken, like in Europe, of Vakken or Sweden Rock, where it's a mix, a slew of bands.
He did Sweden Rock with us, and he was terrified. And I will tell this story because, I mean, that day was Deep Purple, Celtic Frost, Crocus. I forget who else was on, and he was like
the next day.
Did you?
Yeah, we played the day after you guys played.
Okay, I think Doro was on the bill, and I remember him saying to the manager, what are you trying to do to me here? Because, I mean, you look out and it is a sea of leather and jean jackets with patches and just and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. Well, he has to play. And it's funny, it was him and Jeff Healy were on the bill that day. And it was the same thing, this for Crocus, this for Celtic Frost. Here comes George. And he loved it, and he was like, "That was incredible." And so,
see that.
Speaks Vakken.
They're so much more open-minded there in Europe too. To that kind
they really are. They really are. And I remember him saying, "Well, what should I play?" And I'm like, "Well, play what they booked you. They know what you are." And it was pretty cool to see it. And yeah, I think Vakin would be one I would, whether that could ever happen or not, I don't know, but I'd love to see it.
The funny thing is, whenever when I was playing when I was still in MSG in 06, and I was doing, when we weren't on the road, I was out with Thorogood doing lights, So I flew back to Germany after a tour or whatever, and we were to start back up with Schenker. And Holger, the guy, the half owner of Vakin, he picks me up, and he's driving me to the hotel, and he's asking me about Thorogood. And he's the biggest Thorogood fan there is. Here's the king, the German tank, the king of metal, and he's asking me, don't tell anyone. I love George Thorogood. I love him. This big giant. He's like 6'9" and 8,000 pounds. And he's asking me about Thorogood. And I'm just laughing the whole time, because, I said, well, why don't you book him? But that's how
metal street cred, right?
Yeah.
But, at Sweden Rock, it was like that. Whenever I played there with MSG, and it was all the heavy bands, but we played, and then who was Chris and Ted McKenna came out with
Alex Harvey.
Alex Harvey band without Alex Harvey. They played, and then Ted Nugent, and then Whitesnake. And it was just kind of, but it was like heavy bands on the other side.
Yeah.
But it's it's always this kind of weird.
They have great bills. Yeah, I wish they did stuff like that here in the States.
But it's not so here. If it's a metal headliner, it's all metal bands, because they think that's what you want to hear. And I like in Europe that they put them in the middle. The best band, biggest band might be at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
That way everybody's there all day, instead of all day long. You got all these bands, and then now it's 10 o'clock. Right. But
everyone's burnt out. Yeah.
I think they're starting to try a little more in the States with with some of the festivals, but boy, nothing like the European festivals, where it's just the mix. You just look and go, what in the world, but it works. It works. And I think it's people like music, and it's like, I at the same time I was listening to the Scorpions and Iron Maiden, and I was listening to Michael Jackson, Off the Wall, and Toto, and it didn't matter. It was just really good music,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's how it should be. I grew up, I listened to King Crimson and Yes and all those weird bands, and I'd go see, we went and seen every concert. I went and seen every concert that came from when I was 12 until I was about 16. Every concert. It didn't matter if it was Dan Fogelberg, and I can't stand any of his songs. I was there. It was a concert, and I loved that, and it was all the way up. I went to concerts all the way up until, I think it was the first time I had to pay $20 to get in a concert, and it was King Diamond and Flotsam and Jetsam.
Oh, I remember.
And I was like, man, $20 to get in a concert. And that was it. I just kind of stopped going. I kept going to concerts, but I no longer paid to get in, Not
well, that was back when we were kids. That was what you did. You went to shows, and unfortunately, the youth today, that's not going out and going to concerts isn't the same feeling that we had when we were younger. They have their YouTube and their other stuff, and it's just not the same vibe, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
But I do love your Inside Metal series, and before I met Rev and you, I loved those and loved watching them, because I could see Don Dokken and Dave Meniketti in the same time as I could see. Certainly, there were bands that I had heard of, but I hadn't. Either the album cover scared the hell out of me, and I didn't. I was like, oh man, I don't know about that one. What But then you hear it, and a lot of your films have gotten me to check out other bands that I didn't. I knew the name, I just didn't know about them.
Right.
And the Bay Area ones are killer,
The Bay Area ones are great,
yeah, it's killer. What's great is that if you didn't have those, most people would never know about Kerry King, playing those Megadeth shows,
Sure.
Yeah.
I only knew about it because I have friends that grew up there with them that moved here, that had told me, oh yeah,
I wouldn't have known any of that.
Yeah.
But it's
that's That's the
Band,
purpose of
band
this.
versus brand, another one that
There you go. Yeah.
and that one got my business mind going because suddenly, like, who owns the Destroyers logo?
Well, I'm glad you
Not
got
that
into
I wanted
that,
to take
'cause-
advantage of it, but I thought, well, how do I protect these guys?
But
you know?
that is a big thing. The Destroyers is part of, the George Thorogood brand. And yeah, absolutely. And George Thorogood's got such a huge name. And
what's that thing like, that became evident on the video when a band starts out, you're going to conquer the world together, and then life happens and you might hate each other at the end. Well, who owns the band? Who owns Hawkwind? It was one of them. Who owns Hawkwind?
Right.
And suddenly when you brave new world and we're all going to conquer the world together, we're going to be a band for the rest of our lives, and you're my brothers. I hate you. Those are ugly conversations that every artist and band needs to have at the beginning, and no one wants to. But that was a very eye-opening.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, that was a little different for me doing the business end, but I thought it was important, especially in this day and age when you're seeing a lot of these legacy bands are, Skinnerd, and where the estate, some of the the wives own the name, or this and that, it's a crazy business. And especially after someone's dead and gone, like a Bowie or even Lemmy or whatever, who's going to carry on the name. The t-shirts will still sell even more so than when the artist was alive sometimes. So somebody's making money out there.
Well, and look at
now.
Look at all the Motown, soul, and R&B. I mean, the Spinners. How many Spinners are there? And how many Four Tops groups? And how many Temptations? Right. I mean, there's. Hey, which Spinners am I going to see? That And
exactly.
It's
filtered into the whole '80s metal scene. Great White or Queensryche or LA Guns. It's like, well, which version is it? Yeah. Is it the the Jeff Tate version, or is it the other version?
We just did that in Minnesota. It was Jack Russell's Great White.
Yeah.
It was George, Jack Russell's Great White, and is it called Cinderella, or was it Tom Kiefer?
Tom Kiefer.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So
so he is playing with some of the '80s metal bands.
Every now and then it'll happen. Every now and then it'll happen, and I think it works really well. But
absolutely.
Well,
that's the thing about George is people, it's because it's not just that rock and roll 50s music with an edge. It's kind of like that biker rock, tough and rumble rock and roll. So he could play to a full-on biker Hells Angels crowd, to a country crowd, to a full-on metal crowd. And
it depends on how you think of the
energy.
Songs. The songs are, a couple of the songs are really heavy.
Yeah,
He's got a heavy guitar sound. Everybody hears guitar sound. That's in, even there's a metal guy or just a rock guy, they hear it and they're like, God, how's he getting that sound? It's just so, it's such a heavy sound. You only think of it because of how it came into play, because AC/DC is far from being a heavy metal band. That's just, their sound, everything is just rock. But those songs are so heavy at the same time that, it's one of those things. I mean, if you listen to 21st Century Schizoid Man, it's the heaviest song I've ever heard. It came out in 1969, and it has a flute.
In Crimson,
Well, all the AC, like you bring up AC/DC. I mean, you hear that, and like, if you're a blues fan, which I am, and you had a healthy dose of Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and whomever in your life, you go, oh yeah, absolutely, I'm in. Sign me up, but it's like Rev says, they're not a metal band, but man, it's heavy. It is heavy.
Yeah, Deep Purple. It's just so heavy.
Deep Purple. Oh man,
but they're not really. People don't consider them metal, but that's super. That's how George. There's some of these songs that,
I agree.
I mean, part of it is I hear it in my ears, so I'm hearing, just the guitar on one side, and it's like I'm thinking, man, this is. If other people could hear this, they would see how heavy this really is. It's not like not like Slayer, but.
Sure.
But if Tom Araya was singing over one of these songs, you'd be like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Adam said earlier, talking about John Lord. People think, oh, keyboards. We don't want keyboards to lighten up. You hear like the '80s ballads, like the White Snake ballads. That's the pussy keyboards. But you listen to John Lord, there's nothing heavier than hearing In Rock, or listen to Ken Hensley. I was just listening to Gypsy Live when that kicks in.
The rhythm,
keyboards. That is it's keyboards, but it is so dark and heavy and heavier than
Rainbow and Don Airey and all that stuff. I mean, Tony Carey, rhythm parts they're carrying alone, where you hear it. It's a guitar part. No, that's a clavinet. Overdriven, you know. But without it, the bottom end would have fallen out of the solo.
Opening the Terror Woman, you know, with the keyboard solo that comes into that. I mean, oh man, when I heard that, it's like, or Stargazer.
And then getting in, you know, the guys like Jens Johansson with the leads, and I'm totally drawn a blank on the band and from the guy just passed away from Finland. Children of Bodom.
Oh, Children of Bodom, yeah, great guitar player.
But that keyboard player, another one, you know.
Well, in Sweden and Finland and Norway, some of the most amazing musicians. And I'm glad you bring up Jens Johansson, good buddy, a great guy. Jens and Anders, what a team, man! Ever since Silver Mountain, the old band, then they joined.
That's always been my favorite Adam story. Whenever I'll mention anything about Jeff Soto, and he'll immediately go to meeting those guys at the music store, and you know.
Yeah, I worked in a music store in Dayton, Ohio, in the mall, guitars and keyboards, and I'm in a tie, and these Swedish guys come in and want to check out the one wanted to check out the new Fender. I can't remember the series when Fender went to all the bassist guitars with the silver and the gray, and it was like their more metal series, and he went to the bass player wanted to check out that. Keyboard player wanted to check out this new chord keyboard, which was Jens Johansson. And this guy rips off these, you know, me being a classical piano player, I'm hearing all these Baroque licks, but with these bends on them. And I'm like, oh my, and you know, they said, hey, we're playing a show and invited us to come. They didn't give us tickets, but we bought tickets.
But you weren't familiar with Rising Force at this time.
I had never heard of Yngwie Malmsteen and Rising Force in my life. Okay. And the opening band was Talus with Billy Sheehan.
Right, yes.
So we go
Mitch Perry was playing.
Mitch Perry playing guitar, and we go to this roller skating rink, and, you know, first of all, I'm flipped out by Talus. I can't believe what I'm seeing or hearing because I had never heard of them either.
Right.
And, you know, to sink your teeth into that was, you know, there, and then Rising Force comes out, and this singer who wasn't on every song, which was another thing. It was like, what? There's a singer, but he's only on a couple songs. It was Jeff Scott Soto. And that voice, man, and like he commanded the stage. I mean, it was like, and I remember the tour, the Rape and Pillage tour, the Vikings are back. Right. And it was just this whole, and Jeff Soto was young, wasn't he? He was a young guy.
He was very young, yeah.
16.
But in my mind, he was not of this earth, and he was not American at all.
He had the big afro and the purple,
big hair and the outfit, and he looked huge. Yeah. And he had the consummate foot up on the monitor, and I mean, a manly man, and the whole thing was incredible. And I still listen to those first two Rising Force albums all the time, and still think Yngwie, you can say what you want. I think the guy's a monster. I think he's one of the most soulful of the shredders. The tone, everything about. But yeah, the band was that blew my mind, and is still one of the most fun memories of me. To think of growing up in Dayton, Ohio, and these Swedish guys came in, and another band that came into the mall for a photo shoot that ended up being the cover of one of their albums was Accept. Okay. And it was Russian Roulette. Was that one of their albums? Yeah, it was
at one of the table with their.
Yeah, it was one of those photo booths where you can dress up like cowboys and that. And really? I remember, tracking them down and wanting to meet them, and but it's I have a metalhead deep within me that'll always be there.
Me and Adam are the same age, so it's that, it's that thing. What's funny about the Thorogood connection to that, us in our age, is that we were doing a tour years back in Canada, and we were on our way into, I don't even remember which town we were going into, but we got snowed in, and we were stuck all day with the guys from the Kids in the Hall.
Yeah.
And Calgary, they were supposed to play Calgary that night, and we were the next.
That was a British sitcom or whatever was in it.
Canadian.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
So we hung out with them all day at the little truck stop, and then finally they opened up, so we follow them in. Then we get a call, hey, they're going to go ahead and do their show without the props. They're going to start about 10 if you guys want to go. So we go to the show, watch it, it's great. We all go down, afterwards, green room, we're down there. And all the guys and the kids in the hall are the same age as me and Adam. So they're all coming up, we're getting our pictures. They're like, hey, introduce me to George. Because they were at the same time that Bad to the Bone came out, MTV was just coming out and getting big. I was like, 14 years old or whatever. So we're all the same age. So that's why, Thorogood was like, when you think of, he's like Elvis.
It was huge
of our age.
Yeah.
So I had to take, and I'm like, I took these guys over, to meet George, and they were so, it's like, they wanted to meet Elvis, basically,
Yeah.
And he will ham it up for you when you meet him. Is the the fun part?
Who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he loves him because he's a comedian. He loves the funniness, but he's not gonna.
Yeah, if he could never play the guitar again and tell jokes, we'd all be out of a job.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, I can tell live he's got that total sense of humor, and he's just got that rapport with the audience where he's just comfortable up there.
And there's no act
ramble.
there. That's not an act. That's George 24/7.
Yeah,
it truly is. Yeah,
right on.
And that's
maybe we'll get him on a podcast one of these days.
Careful what you wish for.
Talk about.
You want to be able to ask a few questions, right?
We'll just let him roll with it.
Maybe he can interview you.
Yeah, that would be great too. I would love
What's
that.
this inside metal thing?
Yeah, what's metal? Metal what?
Right on. Well, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure talking to you guys, and hopefully we can hang out again soon.
Bob.
Let me know when you're back in California.
Yeah,
we'll definitely. I'm between LA and Northern California, so anytime you're in town, give me a holler. We'll go out for dinner and just hang out and have a few beers. And
yeah, man, we'd love that.
Absolutely. And Rev, before we go, why don't you give a plug once again and how people could? I know RevJones.com, right?
RevJones.com. Anything Rev Jones bass will always find me. If you don't put bass on there, sometimes you end up with Jim Jones and.
That actually did pop up.
And everybody likes that.
That gets all depressing.
Well, it's not as bad as when I was talking to Frank Marino, from Mahogany Rush. You type in Frank Marino, it comes out as a female impersonator in Las Vegas.
Yes, I've seen. Oh, Frank Marino's there tonight. You look at the picture and he looks a lot different.
It's like, whoa, it's a cross-dresser. I didn't know that.
Maybe I don't want to hear those songs.
That's hilarious. And Adam, anything we got to look forward to seeing George hopefully at the end of the year in September.
Just check out georgethorogood.com. It's all on there, and you'll see us. Unless something drastic happens that won't be our fault, we will be on the road this year, end of summer through the year, and then next year is Europe, Canada, and a couple other things I can't talk about we're working on, but we're gonna be busy.
All right, let's get them on some more metal festivals.
I'd love that, man.
Yeah.
When's the Inside Metal Festivals?
Yeah,
well, hopefully soon. We obviously for the Bay Area Godfathers, we had to cancel all the screenings. We had a few planned for that, and that had to all be canceled. But we'll work on something. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. But I do appreciate both your support for the Inside Metal titles as well as the Bandverse brand. That is honoring to know that you guys are big fans of the documentary series, and support these guys, support George, all you metalheads out there,
and support Bob.
Yeah, well, thank you, Adam, and support the Rev Jones band too. Check out his new CD. When is the new CD coming out, Rev?
Probably. I'm hoping for July.
Right on.
We're gonna set when the mix is done. That's when we'll set the date.
And the title is again
In the Key of Z.
In the Key of Z. Right on. Gentlemen, it was an absolute pleasure. You guys take care, and we will talk very soon. All right.
See you, Bob. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Adam.